Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid, although lately it looks like I'm doing it at night, right? Because it's so dark in here. I'm Brigid Burke, and we are just about, thankfully I'm not that late today. It's 7:02. Good morning, Alex. Wow, we've got Pat and we got Melissa. This is great. We got everybody just kind of, that's the first time I've seen people join at the same time. Good morning, Joanne. And I saw your voice note. I have to listen to it. Good morning to everybody. It's very good to see everyone. This is a Keurig morning, and usually I'm really cheap with the Keurig. I always do. Hello, Sam. Good morning, afternoon. I always do the Keurig, and I always do it twice. Like, you put the K-cup in. And I always try to get 2 cups out of it because they're expensive and I hate just using one and throwing it away. The second cup's always kind of, but I went to a second cup today. So this is actually cup of coffee number 3. So, it looks like nighttime. It's exactly, Melissa, that's funny. It's literally exactly what I said when I came on. I feel like it's morning coffee. It feels like night coffee with Brigid, right? Just because the sun is coming up. I don't know, one of these days I'll have to experiment with it and like turning this around so that you can see what's behind me. That might be kind of cool, just so you can see like what's coming up. But the only thing about that is that I found that with the cameras, sometimes it doesn't show you, it doesn't, like it just looks like a blob of light. Like it doesn't actually show you what's going on behind me. So, and good morning, Jen. Good to see everybody. It was an interesting kind of a night, and this morning, I had weird dreams last night. Certainly one of them, it was like my shoes were gone. Like I had no shoes. I'd lost my shoes and I was walking around barefoot. And I feel like that was a dream. I feel like that, I mention it because I feel like this is a morning where, I don't know, we're in Scorpio season now. Scorpio came in around 6:15 Eastern time last night. We are now out of Libra and into Scorpio, which of course Scorpio is associated with Pluto. I think traditionally with Mars, but with Pluto. And, but I don't feel like it's a negative thing. I feel like, because sometimes we tend to have very negative scorpionic associations. People who are Scorpios tend to be either intensely, some of the people I've known who have been like the best, most empathetic, most compassionate people that I've dealt with as leaders and so forth have been Scorpio. And I've also dealt with some people who, I don't know what the nice way to say it. Probably there is no nice way to say about some other Scorpios that I've encountered. I suppose, though, you could say that could be true of any sign. There's people... There's different ends of the spectrum in terms of traits and everything else. That's why when you read these things about, like if you go through and read the horoscopes and they say, oh, if you're an Aries, this means you have this trait, this trait, this trait. And it goes through this whole list, and eventually you get to a point where you're like, wait a minute, I'm not that much of a jerk, right? Like, but the point being is that these are the range of traits that could present themselves depending on how else the chart is configured. So that's why I always say, like, trying to just read the generic traits of the sun sign never really are enough. But then again, we do all know people who sometimes just really embody certain aspects of them. But I feel like this is, there's a lot yes, exactly. Yeah, it is true. Very true. I always get along great with Scorpio, some of my best friends. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, me too. I tend to get along with other Taurians, like Jenny, and, well, actually, like a lot of people here. I tend to get along with Virgo very well, as a general rule. And there are a lot of Scorpios who I have very good relationships with. But Aquarius too, I think, also. Those are the signs. Not to say that... And Leo. Leo's another big one who I tend to get on very well with. So, so I don't know. So it's... Probably it's, that oftentimes I tend to prefer Vedic astrology on the whole, just because I feel like because first of all, it has to do with where the positions of the planets and stars actually are, rather than using the spring equinox as a reference point. because a lot of times, yes, same, and cancer's galore, yes. Yeah, and like I said, I mean, cancer too. I mean, there's a lot of people I love who are cancer. But it's, it's very, I always find that the Vedic system, or sidereal, I'm going to say sidereal or sidereal, I never know quite sure how to say that. But the one where you're basing it on the actual position is usually 23 degrees different from this one. So, for example, if you're, like, I'm a Cancer ascendant in this, what we think of as Western or tropical astrology. In Eastern astrology, I'm a Gemini ascendant. And, you know, there's just different planets that have shifted. I mean, basically the planets are in the same houses. It's just a matter of what sign they're in is different. Well, I'm not in the lion's den. Yes. Well, yeah, I know we've talked about that, right? It's very, good morning, Suda. Yeah, no, I think we've got everybody, who normally join. Sometimes we do get some people that whose names I'm not familiar with who join, but we've got all the current group, so this is really good. So I don't know. I just, it's, so with the Vedic system, I don't know. I just feel that sometimes is, and actually in Vedic astrology, I don't think we're technically in Scorpio yet, but I do feel, yes, good morning. I'm at a crab boil, apparently. Oh. Well, you know, dealing with cancer can be very intense because cancers are very, very intensely emotional. And that was something I learned early on in life, is that, because I think I definitely presented more as that Cancer ascendant when I was younger. I was extremely, extremely emotional. You have to remember my Venus and Mars are 12th house. So generally speaking, like when it comes to, love and romance and things like that, like I'm not somebody who presents very well. There's some people who just exude that you know, that charm and sexuality. So mine's all hidden in the 12th house. So it's really it's one of those things. But I remember when I would present very much as Cancer, and things would get very, very dramatic emotionally, and I had got burned so many times with that I think I finally just shifted into. Actually, I think I shifted into academic mode. It was just kind of like, okay, being overly emotional is not something anybody likes, and it wasn't solving anything. That said, I feel like I'm spending a lot of time now trying to reclaim that space and say, okay, no, but my emotional side is important, and I don't want to, you know, I don't want to do the thing, I don't want to do the patriarchal thing of saying, you know, stop with all the emotions. That said, you know, you want to keep things in balance, right? You're too funny. Yeah, so it's something definitely has shifted today. I woke up this morning with a definite sense things have shifted. I'm feeling very artistic today, and I actually spent yesterday power washing the outside of my house. Jenny, you actually, you and your husband lent me the first power washer, and my neighbor down the street lent me his to finish the job. So I actually went out yesterday because it's been very warm, and I'm like, okay, this is the weather to get painting done and stuff, because when it gets cold, it's too cold to do all that work. So I'm going to be out today painting, and I found all my stencils. I went in the back, and I knew, because anybody who's been to my house, I have the bathroom walls stenciled on the side, and so I'm going to be outside. I decided I'm going to do some more stenciling outside in the front, so I think that's going to be very cool. Power washing seems fun, actually. You know, it is, and it's kind of satisfying too when you finally get the thing to the right, you know, thing, and you get it to work. It really does that. Jenny's just was just going to ask if I did. Yes, and Jenny says we all need to go back space of emotions and sensitivity. Oh yes, well that's it. we can cut ourselves off from our emotions and shame ourselves out of them. Sounds cathartic. Yeah, it's so nice. And my neighbor happened to walk by with his dogs, and I was like, because he was looking at my porch, and I was just kind of like, it looks a lot better, doesn't it? So yeah, if I have to finish up with whatever I'm going to do with that today and bring it back to their house. And I pulled some fencing down in the back, and I have 3 posts that are left standing, so I'm going to actually paint those. and I'm actually going to probably go to the hardware store today because I want to get. I don't know. I'm not quite sure what I want to do with that space because the 3 pillars are kind of awkward. But I'm thinking I'm going to put like maybe little bird feeders up there and some other stuff. Just kind of they have those little benches for the squirrels so they can sit up there and eat their little acorns and nuts and stuff. So yeah, I just feel like kind of making something like that in the back, like making the backyard look a little more artistic than it does right now, and maybe even in the spring if I'm still living here, right? Getting some plants and stuff like that like creepers and stuff that can decorate the fences so that it looks more artistic and not the mess that it can sometimes look back there just because of the way the space is. So so I'm just feeling like doing all that kind of stuff, and so I'm putting a lot of things. I think I do have an appointment. We do have a Rouhani at 5 today. But other than that, I've got like a ton of paperwork and stuff I need to be doing. The school, those of you in ISFM, that's tomorrow night. Usually it's Wednesday nights, but it's going to be Thursday this week because Kate can't do Wednesdays. So we'll finally get that lecture and then get into that. Yep, and Pat, you and I have that session. And but I was going to do a lot of paperwork today, and then I'm like, you know what? No, just get the outside stuff done because then it's going to be cold again, and you'll just be glad you got it done before winter. So anyway, not to tell you all about my laundry list or painting list of what I'm going to be doing today. I thought with this new astrological shift, it might be good to do some astrology cards today. I was going to do the Black Moon astrology. The topic that really came to my mind, though, today was one of liberation. The idea that somehow, like, I don't know. I felt like in that dream, I also saw myself crossing a bridge in that dream as well, but it was a bridge that was really, really high up. And I'm not a heights person, so when I become aware of that in my dream, I'm like, oh my God. But then after that, I saw myself barefoot. So I'm assuming I made it across the gap I was supposed to make it across in the stream. But I feel like something has shifted. But I don't think this is something unique to me. Yes, that's going to translate into a certain experience for me. But I think everybody here is going to find that there's going to be a shift going on and in this particular season. And I don't know, we go into Scorpio season every year, but for some reason this year seems a lot more significant. Like there's going to be something, like there's something really new that's coming out on the horizon, and it's going to be something that has more depth to it, something that is more, this is just funny. I just literally flipped the Scorpio card over. It was weird. And I don't know why I feel compelled to tell you about this, but I was talking to Ellen, my friend Ellen Jones, who wrote the book that I have in Cotonia Books, the Cunning Person's Poetry Apothecary, which is a wonderful little book. I definitely recommend it. But she told me she was having dreams of unicorns. And I think before I'd actually visited Amma, I had a dream of her almost as a unicorn, right? Like this very special kind of, almost mythical kind of creature, this beautiful white creature with a horn. And when I was looking out, when I looked up through my skylights, which I can now see through, I have an app for checking what the stars are. And when I put the app up and I looked up, there was actually the unicorn constellation, like right in front of my window, which I was like, ooh, I haven't seen that there before. I know there's Sirius and there's Canis Major and all that, and that's it was down a little farther. But I had unicorn right above my window. I was like, ooh, that's interesting. It's an interesting little sign. And then the moon and Jupiter are right above it. So, it's, and I don't remember what the unicorn constellation is called. I'm sure it has some technical name, and I'm not remembering what it is. But I thought, ooh, that's interesting. So let's see what we have for what the astrology cards will tell us about what's going on here. What is the name of the app? It's called Star Chart. Star Chart, and it's usually kind of like one word, capital STAR, capital CHART. The only thing about Star Chart, just so you know, it's I have that app and I pulled unicorn yesterday for a card. Oh, interesting. Okay, so cool. Synchronicities, yeah. Something about the unicorn, like something new and special, is starting or has been born in some way. So, let's see what we have here. Okay. Oh, this is an interesting collection of things in the cards. Okay. So, oh, sure. Yeah, the only thing annoying about Star Chart is that it's kind of like if you go into any of the little bits of it that are, I mean, there's some parts that are paid, some that are free. But if you open up any of the messages and stuff, sometimes it's hard to get back to the beginning screen. So just as a caveat, there are many apps that will actually do this, but that happens to be the one that I use. So, so just be aware it has some things about it that can be a little annoying. Lately, it's been okay, but okay. So our first house is actually second house card. Okay, and this is the owning card. So this is Taurian energy. Okay, this is the house of money and possessions. And generally, I know in the book, the first line for this card is "You will own it." Okay, you will own it. And then the environment that we're seeing is Mercury, which is mind. Okay, so this actually kind of almost represents a mindset here where we are able to think clearly about what we need to put down roots, what we need to be practical, what we're doing financially for ourselves, right? This is almost clear thought and clear communication as well, because Mercury has a lot to do with how we communicate and how we share with other people. So the first two cards only show kind of the environment that we're in, and I'm like, wow, that's just very. Yeah, it's just a very, I mean, I'm trying to find the right words for it. It's just, it's kind of like, okay, so we're looking at earth and air here. It's the way in which we are thinking or talking about or constructing our world in terms of our relationship to possessions, our relationship to things, and the things that we have. So this is interesting. So yeah, so there just seems to be a lot of mental energy maybe focused around what we need to do for security. It kind of makes sense when you think about it, because we're getting ready to move into the winter season. And, Scorpio is the one, once we move into, we have Sagittarius in November, and then winter starts with Capricorn. And so there's this kind of idea now that maybe we are now thinking about what we need. The way people might have thought as we're getting towards like Samhain or towards the harvest about what we need to store up. What is it we need to be considering as we move through, or what we even need to consider in terms of security in any kind of new space that we're in. Now, here's the hidden factor, which I find interesting, and that is the fourth house. Now, you were just talking about Cancer, right, Joanne? But the fourth house is the house, the card of putting down roots. So this says that there's something, okay, and as we're moving into Scorpio, there's something rooted in the past. There's something rooted in family, in home. And by the way, fourth house sometimes does have to do with either angelic or fairy activity too. Just that was a weird aside, but that I had remember reading in that, thinking, oh, I hadn't really thought about the fourth house in that way. But something hidden that's going on. There's a lot of, this is a very domestic feel. And I remember I did the Aries through Virgo readings for this week, and I was going to say this feels like me cards. Yeah, it's funny how we how we lay it out, and we all kind of feel like it applies to us. And I'm sure it does. It's like I'll do a reading and I'll think, oh, this reading seems very specific to a particular person, and then I will hear from like 5 different people like, oh, that reading felt like it was just for me too, and I'm like, okay, well then clearly that energy was applying to, it's interesting. You almost feel like you can't do a general, or people sometimes think, well, how can you do a general reading for somebody that would actually apply very specifically? But but oftentimes it does. You find that we may be more alike than dissimilar. Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. You're right. In order: Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. She's absolutely right. Oh, and by the way, Leo right after it. So it's like we've moved in order. And then what would be after Leo? Virgo? No, the last card is not Virgo. So, but it's, actually though, it's the one that should be at the beginning though. It's Aries. So it's like we've gone Taurus through Virgo and then stuck Aries onto the end. So yeah, that is kind of interesting. But yeah, the fact that this has to do with roots. So now I know we've been looking a lot about that. Remember yesterday we did the nostalgia card, right? Like that came up. The Six of Cups came up, like something out of the past. But I don't feel like it's the past. I know a lot of us have been working through the past. Or I'm going back to bed now. Yeah, it's not necessarily oftentimes when we think about looking back to the past, we either think of, getting stuck in the past, like the good old days kind of stuff, or we may think of looking back to the past as something that is like, that we are, or there's some kind of trauma from the past that we figure is repeating in the present, and so therefore we need to look to the past. And I don't know, interestingly, I don't feel like necessarily either one of those things is what this is about. I feel more, it's like, I feel like we're laying down new roots. Like, I don't feel like this is almost like there's something in the past, but I feel like there's been a break with the past. And the advice it's giving us is the fifth house, which is creativity. And isn't that interesting? I wake up this morning and the first thing I want to do is go outside and paint, and not just like slap a coat of paint on something, but like I want to paint, right? And other people may feel other things during the season. But this is about creativity, okay? Now, fifth house is an interesting one because it has to do with creativity, it has to do with children, okay? It has to do with love affairs, so there's something new here. That's the thing. I'm thinking of this as almost like a child kind of a thing. Like there's a new thing, like there's a new, and we've been talking for a while, right? About kind of being more childlike or being more, in the sense of, not in the sense of the, I mean, again, child, like we were just talking about things. We were just talking about the way in which, astrological signs have different traits. Childhood has different traits as well. There are things about children that are that represent innocence and newness and things like that. And then there are aspects of childhood that maybe are more self-centered, and that's when we talk about someone being childish, right, or immature. But that's not the sense of this. But this is also about being creative. It doesn't mean necessarily about creating children, which is one aspect of this house. It's also about love affairs. It's about being seen. It's about being seen for who you are. I mean, this is fire. It's ruled by the sun. So this is where you shine. People see the real you and appreciate the real you. Now, Joanne says, my perspective at the moment is about savoring old special moments more. Like, I didn't appreciate certain things enough, little things. Yeah, and that could be part of it too. We could be sitting there and feeling like we need to, take, what do they say? Stop and smell the roses, right? Like 8-year-old me sitting with dad watching baseball. Okay. Well, yeah, right. Like those are the good memories. A lot of times we only focus on what's, and maybe for good reason, but a lot of times, we, I'd love to be seen for who I am. Suda says, yeah, well, you know what? That's the era I think we're moving into though, is, moving away from, there seems to be a lot too about dropping the burdens of society. Like when I think about being barefoot in that dream, it's like, okay, you're not, that's like being free from, what those expectations are. And Johan says, I see you. Yes. Tired of being misunderstood. Well, that's it. And it becomes kind of a vicious circle, doesn't it? Because we feel like because people don't appreciate us for who we are, that we have to defend ourselves in a certain way, and we may withdraw and maybe not show people who we are. And yes, absolutely. I think we all see. I think just about everybody here who's met you sees you for who you are. Absolutely. And and who you are is a really great person. And so it's. I'm tired of misunderstanding myself. Definitely feel those things too. Well, yeah, that's it. I think this is, and I don't know if it's the phase of life we're all in, but I also think it's just a, I don't know. I just think, but I think it's more than that. I think there's something that's going on collectively that's more about authenticity. Because I've been talking about this, I feel like, for a very long time, and it almost sounds like a, yeah, oh, you're welcome. Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I don't, I think everyone here are the coolest magicians I've ever met. Oh, well, yeah, I think this is a really cool group. I think the people who come onto this morning live stream are like, they're all the coolest people. I totally agree with that. It just seems to be that we've kind of, put this group together of just like really, really awesome people. And so it's, I mean, we're all trying to figure things out, but this is about being seen. And ultimately we have Aries energy, as I mentioned, as the outcome here. And Aries energy is like, go for it. Aries energy is fire. It's saying, okay. And remember, we are, Queens. Yes, agree. We have a fabulous group here. We do. I mean, this is great. This is just great how this has kind of happened organically. I started doing these live streams like in May, and then it just seems like we've just, this little, really nice little group has kind of gravitated towards these, which is just excellent. And we are badasses. Ain't that the truth? We are total badasses. And but it's interesting because everybody here, I think, has been doing the work. Everybody here is doing the work. There are so many people who, they're just, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be judgy about that, but it's just, there's sometimes people who kind of end up in a loop. You just barged in. No, you didn't just barge in, Joanne. Come on. We've known each other. You didn't just barge in. At all. We have, we all kind of, we're all on a path. We all have a certain amount of self-awareness about ourselves, and we're trying to, it's interesting. We're talking about Scorpio. We're doing the excavation work, right? Trying to go and see what's there. And a lot of people are scared to do that. I remember when I started this business of transition life coaching, it's like, who's going to want to do that? I mean, who really, when I would tell people I'm a dark worker, not a light worker, and people kind of go, and I'm like, well, I'm not saying I'm working, with evil forces, although, I mean, no, I don't. That's not my general modus operandi. I'm aware of all types of energies, but it's like I'm more dealing with what's hidden, and what we don't necessarily want to look at every day. And so, and that's really hard because a lot of people are kind of like this. Like, I remember even Corinna saying to me when she first met, she's like, yeah, when I heard the kind of work you did, I was a little intimidated by that. Like, I mean, obviously she figured out that it, that didn't put her off, but she did find it a little bit like, ooh, but that's it. And it's very hard to get things going when people think, they think that you're going to be working in some uncomfortable spaces. Come to the dark side. We have dark roast here. Wasn't it come to the dark side? We have cookies. I thought that was at least another version of it. This is so Scorpio by nature, looking at the darkness and diving deep. Yeah, 100%. And I think that may be why it's coming up right now. But we are, I think when I'm seeing Aries as the outcome here, something else to remember, because this is Mars energy, Aries energy, and Mars, of course, was the original ruler of Scorpio. But Aries is, but think about the fact that next year we're moving into 2025. Neptune's currently in Pisces. Saturn's currently in Pisces. We have a lot of these planets now, outer planets moving into Aries. Okay, and that also represents a new start, and it's to me, this to me is all an element of a new start. Like something new has happened here. And the fact that we have all of this creative, we have Saturn, okay, and Saturn is the is kind of a the slow and steady taskmaster, but now moving into Aries, which is very fast moving, right? And then you have, and very determined, but you also have Neptune, which is all of our imagination. There is a very strong feminine element to Neptune because it's Piscean by nature, and now it's moving into a fire element. We're moving into an era where fire and air are going to dominate more than earth and water. And so that, I feel like, is... Yeah, I feel like that's almost the thing that's being born, and we're figuring out, okay, how do we nest? How do we lay down roots? How do we, authentically come to who we are? And part of that may be digging down still. That may be the other aspect of the fourth house there, that we need to get into our roots and figure out, we're figuring out, who we are and where we actually want to be. Because I think that's an element too, is that when you sit down and talk to somebody, this is why I think like when I do coaching and so forth, we do want to talk about people's goals, but you want to kind of stay very flexible on that point, because I think sometimes as people discover more and more about who they are, their goals may shift. And I think also the fact that the Taurus energy is coming up first is because I think our attitude towards stuff may be changing as well. We may be thinking differently about stuff. I was watching a live stream last night, and the person on this live stream had mentioned he's a musician, and basically had said something about how they were, him and this other person in his band was like saying they were working very, very hard to like make an album and to make music and to get a certain things done. And the person was like thinking, well, this is not worth the effort, because we're never going to make any money at it. And this person said, well, my view of it is I'll make my money back in the long run. And I had said to him, I said, well, is money really the best motivator for creativity? Is money, I haven't heard his response to that yet, but I just said to him, I said, is money the best motivator for creativity? Because a lot of times that's what we think. And it's also, and as I said to him, it's understood that when you really enjoy something, you want to make a living at it. Okay, so money, you can't pretend money's not a factor. But that said, if that's the focus, then what does that do to the creative process, right? Turtle medicine right there. Yeah, there you go. It's, what does that do to the creative process? So I think of, let's go back to our friend Alan Watts, who we haven't brought up in a while, but that's what he said. He said, if the point of everything is to make money, he's like, then making money is really what your goal is, not to produce a good piece of music or produce a piece of art or to produce the thing that you are. If everything's commodified, and if that's the way that we look at everything, or if that's the way that success is judged, okay, when it comes to a commodity, that, it has to be something that we make money at. Oh, you don't make money at that? Well, then that's not worth your time, right? I mean, we come from that kind of a world. And I think sometimes, and it's very hard, there was that book that came out years ago saying, what was it? Do what you love and the money will follow. And a lot of people go, yeah, right, And I mean, to be fair, some things are harder to make money at than others, but it's not like an instantaneous thing. And there's the Saturn element, right? Things take time. It takes time to do things. And obviously, we're all adults and have to do our adulting stuff in the meantime. And a lot of times we just don't have fun doing it. I've often felt that we need to have fun doing something, whatever it is. Like when I used to work in the library and this is back when I was in college, you empty the book drop and do stuff like that. I don't know. I kind of like that. There's kind of a Zen meditation in doing that. When I was married, I could never make my husband understand that, because again, if it wasn't something, if it wasn't just exactly the thing that he wanted to do, then he couldn't enjoy it. And I'm like, well, you could enjoy it. You could enjoy it. There is kind of that's why I liked doing library cataloging for years, because I felt like there was an art to it. It was like there's yes, it's very orderly. It's about labeling and adding subjects and describing. But I love the idea of just taking a work and saying, okay, how am I going to describe this work? How am I going to describe it in a way that's going to make it accessible to people? To me, there's an art to that. That's not just, I don't like what they've turned it into. Like everything else, they've turned it into this, I don't know, this coding kind of crap that I just, I love. I remember when I was at Trinity College in Oxford, I was overseas, and I forget why I was there. It wasn't an official work trip. I wish I could have made it one. But I remember the vice president who I was talking with at the time, he said, look, if you're going to go over to the, I love when I volunteered at the library when you were 14. Yeah, the library, I loved libraries for years. I got tired of them after a while because I worked in libraries for 35 years. But I remember when I went over to Roxton College, which is the kind of the English arm of Fairleigh Dickinson University, which I don't know. I wonder how much longer it's going to stay open. But anyway, it's a beautiful old estate. It was Lord North's old estate, and their archives, because the building is owned by Oxford. They leased the building from Oxford. I went with the librarian there. We went over to the Trinity College archives to meet with the archivist and go through everything that they had in the bursar's office. Because there's always a bursar, they have like this big wall. She showed us this big wall with all these drawers, the bursar, these kind of bursary. and all of the archives, like from this built from the Roxton building and things back to like the 1600s and even earlier. And there were all these old letters. And I remember she didn't make us wear gloves, which I was like, you know, you really should be wearing gloves handling this stuff, because our hands were just black by the time we were done. But just pulling out all these old things and opening them up and like reading. And I remember Andrew was the librarian. He's like, I can't read any of that. And I was like, I was sitting there reading it. He's like, oh, how can you read that? I'm like, it's just script, and you just got to know that F is usually what looks like an F is usually an S, and you know, you stare at enough headstones, right? And you old headstones, and you know how to read this stuff. But we sat there and we were doing some, you know, taking some imaging and stuff of some of these things to bring back for a proposal. And I just loved it. I said, if I could do that kind of librarianship, that's like the best thing ever. Just like being in, like talking about the past, right? Being in the space of something very, very old and kind of giving you a different sense of time and giving you a different sense of where you are, and being able to take the things from that and kind of describe it. That was the aspect of librarianship I loved. But, you know, nowadays, and again, it's understood that dealing in, you know, paper and old printed objects and stuff, that that these things can wear away with time, and that digital solutions are often considered to be a way of preserving them. But then you've got to upgrade all that technology too. You know, you digitize something one year, at some point it's going to have to be updated. And you may have to start the project all over again. You know, because to me, the only medium actually that lasts for a really long time still is microfilm, believe it or not. Because silver nitrate film can last hundreds of years. But so I'm saying I always liked working in preservation, but preservation now has become more about, you know, setting up these, you know, these digital archives and coding and all this kind of stuff that I'm like, that's not really what I want to do. I really miss just being able to sit. It is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Alex is saying this is interesting. It's like, it's just, that's what I wanted to do. And I did do that for a number of years. But then I just started getting involved more in systems and other stuff. And I said, you know, I just like describing stuff. I like being able to, that's the wordiness. I like to be able to tell you about stuff. I like to, and I remembered working with an archivist at Rutgers who had said, when I told her I was in library school, I wanted to do cataloging. She says, well, that's good, because not enough people are doing it. She says, and the people who are doing it, because they think it's just something they can slap out, doing it so poorly that a lot of materials are getting lost, because when you search for them, nobody can find them. That's why I don't like all the keywords and stuff that people use. Like they talked about crowdsourcing in the mid-2000s, like, oh, everybody can just throw their own terms on it. I'm like, no, then you're just making a mess of it, because now you have no trail for an actual researcher to be able to find things, you know? Super interesting. I bet Buffy and Child's Vibes. My teenage self is happy. Yeah, right? Well, yeah, that's the thing too. I would, you know, researching. Then there's researching that kind of stuff. Yes, which is another passion of mine. But let's do our reading for today, our Osho Zen. We're starting with change. Did I not say that a big change was happening? Yes, we've got the Wheel of Fortune is right at the center of our meeting. So something is changed. Something has changed. And this is our inner feeling of which we are unaware. Again, we have our turning in card. Turning away from those voices that are yelling at us to either have different priorities or that are yelling at us to do or be something that we're not. There's this kind of, there's this turning in that's happening here. And the external feeling of which we are aware is mind, right? Okay? The way in which, that's an understatement for me. Yeah. It's mind. This idea that and this is the I think this is the Page of Swords in this one, but it's the way in which we can, when we try to process what's going on around us, our mind's immediately trying to pick certain things out, or trying to compare certain things. You know, compare the new to the old, or compare one aspect of things to another. And this is saying, you know, and I think, and this is what we're aware of. So we're all aware that, like the mind needs to kind of step aside and just allow this kind of sense of just being where you are without all of this, you know, and keeping yourself out of all of this noise. I've often said that the experience of samadhi has a lot to do with being able to, when I have experienced something like it, I almost feel like I can hear a lot of voices around me, like where I am, whether I was sitting in the middle of a satsang group or whether I was just, like I remember one time I was just sitting in my car and there's the traffic outside, but it's almost like you can hear the noise of the world, but somehow you're in a quiet space, right? Like you are in your center. And somehow that's all there, and you know it's all there, and that's all part of what it is, but you are in a quiet space. So you're not approaching it the same way. And that is something, that's a very hard thing to do. Like you can't arrive at that space rationally. You can only arrive at it through, well, I don't know. Some people would say it's an act of grace. You know, it's like, it just, if you, the more that you stop trying and just let yourself be in that space. And for me, it was also through mantra and meditation and things, but I don't want to suggest that there's like a 3-step process to get to that state. But when you're in that state, then I feel like you're really actually experiencing the world as it is, you know? Yeah, rebirth. This is our card. 10 of Swords. Something moving away from this, either the space of just being contented and not moving, and then you have the space of the Lion, which is where I'm angry at everybody and everything, and I'm roaring out about, all the things that have been done to me. And then you move into the space of the Child, which is the space where we have finally worked through all of that, and now we're like, okay, now I'm going back to being a child again. So, good morning. So yeah, and our outcome is the New Vision card. Okay, seeing everything in its height and its depth. And yeah, for me, I think the important thing about this, that's the Hangman card, but I feel like the important thing about that card is when you say New Vision, when you see everything in its height and in its depths, it's not just about seeing the stuff that we like. It's about also looking at the things that we don't like and seeing where they have fit in. If you think about life as being kind of like a game, and you think about yourself as being dealt a hand, right? A poker hand or whatever. You've got a hand, and there's certain things that you have. There's certain cards you have that you go, gosh, I wish I could get rid of this. And then you have other things that you're like, ooh, when I put these things together, this is like a winning combination, right? So it's being able to see the big picture, and part of playing the game is how can you creatively make use of the things that you have? How do you hand in or trade in the things that you don't need, or maybe if you hang on to them long enough, you're going to see where they fit in, right? If you're not throwing things away. But a lot of times how you play the game is like, how do you work with what you've been dealt? Because everybody's going to have quote unquote good cards, and everybody's going to have bad cards. It's going to be a mixture. And of course the good or bad is subjective. But we may find the longer that we play the game, something that maybe we thought was a liability at one time now actually becomes an asset. That's very Saturnian too, because a lot of times when we are younger, Saturn is like an enemy to us. Unless you were born with a lot of Saturn in your chart. Like I was born in a Saturn Mahadasha, and my nakshatra in Vedic astrology is Pushya, which is ruled by Saturn. So Saturn has overshadowed my entire life. So I don't know. So initially, when you're out there and you want to be in that space, Saturn's just kind of like, putting the brakes on it for you, and it's very frustrating. And that's why, you go through all of these kinds of things where you feel like you have to take yourself apart and put yourself back together again. And then later in life, you start to appreciate the benefits that Saturn brings. Okay. You appreciate, taking your time. You appreciate thinking things through, not having to rush, not having to do 20 million things at the same time, and quality over quantity, right? You start thinking about it in that way. And so, yeah, so it takes some time to do that. But this is at the center of the reading. We're in the middle of a big change right now. So, and I really, it's kind of where I started this morning, right? Saturn is seen as a curse often by Hindu practitioners, and I've always disagreed. Yeah, Shani. Shani is often seen as, because he's the enemy of the sun, certainly. And he's kind of sometimes in some places construed of as the black sun. And like alchemically, Saturn is thought of as the black sun. But Shani is, it's kind of like the 12th house energy, right? Shani has to do with... yes, it can place obstacles in our path, but it's also about liberation too. Shani has a lot to do with that. I've done Shani Puja quite often, and actually doing that, if you are, for Hindu, and you're going through like a Sadasati or a strong Saturn phase, then having Shani Puja said is something that's good. You know, whatever temple you might be connected with. Haha, no way. Saturn has always told me he's like the sun behind the clouds. Yes, no, totally. It is a Saturnian spirit. Well, it is. Well, yeah, exactly. And, well, you know what? It's interesting. There's a really good book, and unfortunately, I think they've sold out of it. But Theon Publishing has had a book called The Cult of the Black Cube. And it's literally all about Saturn. And it's a really, really good book. And unfortunately, I think I read that they've sold out of it. I don't know if they might make another edition. If they do, check out, that's where my book is supposed to come out eventually. I know they're just putting a book out about Lilith now, so that they've spent all year working on. You've seen the book through other sellers. Yeah, I have a copy of it. It's really good, and the essays in it are really good, especially the opening essay by, I think it's Tommaso Vincenti did it for at least the edition that I have. And it's really, really interesting stuff about Saturn that I didn't even realize. But yeah, this idea of Saturn as this black sun. Yeah, you'll check it out. Yeah, it's The Cult of the Black Cube, it's called. It's a really good exploration. I mean, obviously, all Theon books are, there's a partially academic and partially practical, for people who are interested in the practical side, maybe working with those energies. But the first part, certainly the academic part, is really interesting. So we're at time. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a great Wednesday. I will have to post pictures of my final results when I'm done painting outside today and see if it looks, if it turns out the way I'm hoping. But I hope everybody has a good Wednesday. I know, Pat, I know I'll see you tonight. Savoring the moments. Thank you. And oh, you're welcome. And you're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome to everybody. And and then some of you I will see at tomorrow morning, and then also at the ISFM tomorrow night. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.